So, hi, I'm Emma and I work with ÄŽfin Malta National Dance Company. I think I know most of you. And we're here today to meet the choreographers and discuss with them ÄŽfin Made, which is a co-production with Spazju Kreattiv and in collaboration with Valletta Cultural Agency. So it's an extension of the Artist in Residency program with ÄŽfin Malta and will be 6 solos created by 7 locally based and all-female choreographers. And the Artist in Residency program was set up by our director Paolo Mangiola in 2018, really as part of the company's aims to continue cultivating contemporary dance in Malta and to give artists a voice and a space to develop their work with support and the means to do so. So, yeah, it's a great project for us because this is really the evolution of that initiative. So we are here with our 7 choreographers, and maybe we can start by introducing yourselves one at a time and, sorry, in 3 words, what is currently sparking your curiosity in choreography?
Great. So I'm Concetta Carielllo from Italy. I've been living for the past 5 years in Malta, and how can I say, like, my current interest in choreography is really going towards the body as a central part and tool, and to use it as a way to get to know ourselves in the process, in this case through dance, through movement, to get to know all the aspects of the body and the bodies, and this is where, let's say, the interest is going in this choreography. I'm also really interested in process-oriented approach to the creation, and to kind of try to take the human element within, so the embodiment of the human within the dance, in a few words. Yeah.
So I'm Rochelle Gatt. I'm from Malta, and at the moment I'm developing as an artist from dance more into physical theater. And if I had to describe the way that I compose choreography in 3 words, would be similar to Concetta: the body, the human element, and also the physicality. And at the moment, something which is intriguing me a lot is the way how the physicality of all human beings is being affected because of certain social changes or social forces, like the use of the media. So this is what I would like to show through the solo of ÄŽfin Made. So, yeah, it's a good opportunity in the right moment.
I'm Zoe Camilleri. I am Maltese, and I'm a dancer, but recently I've been kind of becoming more interested in choreography, and I guess the reason for that is finding ways of discussing social issues through physicality. The other word, I would say expression and reflection, which I think choreography or dance can make you see things in a different way and bring about some kind of social change. So yeah, this is kind of why I'm interested or feel kind of the magnet, being closer to making work. I guess that's the...
I'm Gaby. I'm also Maltese, and I would say I'm a dancer and a choreographer. Since my very first choreography, I would say I have changed quite a lot now, and probably this is the first choreography that I'm creating that's completely different to my norm, I would say. Before I was more interested in more like, not tribal, but you can also say that, more grounded movement, sorry. And now I'm looking more towards the quirky aspects, towards ways how, for example, if you do a more traditional movement, how can you break that and make it more unique in a way? So I'm trying to find my own voice, my own signature, if you can say that. So at the moment, yeah, I'm around there. And yeah, and how you can play with not maybe not theatrical, but maybe more the qualities in a way of how to bring out a character in a work, rather than the main concept in itself, and let the character bring out the concept. So at the moment, I'm over there.
I'm Diane. I'm also a Maltese. I think it is safe to say I think I'm in a transition period at the moment. I'm slowly transitioning out of performance, you know, as a performer myself, and transitioning into choreography. To me, if I had to look at choreography, I think it's about a voice. I always look for something that has a voice, and then I find a way of embodying that voice and translating it into something that I feel will resonate with the people who are watching. I'm always very interested in current events which somehow affect me, and I like seeing how I can translate those events which are affecting me through the body to hopefully resonate with the people who are watching it on the other end. So that's what I hope will come across from the piece for Żfin Made.
Hello, I'm Julienne. I'm also Maltese. I would say I'm a dancer, someone who loves moving and dancing and expressing myself. I'm very interested in somatic practice, and I'm undergoing some studies towards that at the moment. I would say my practice is moving towards being very socially engaged in community and working with people, hence the co-facilitation with Deborah. I like working with other people to expand my own creativity and my own awareness and to bounce off ideas. I feel that's a pattern that is evolving in the way I work. I'm interested in how dance can tell stories and how stories can carry a lot of meaning and generate a lot of empathy to the audiences. And then currently I'm very interested in migration, specifically the situation in Malta, and I'm curious as to how dance can bring more conversation about that, more empathy, and somehow tell different stories. So in terms of representation, tell other sides to the stories that are usually shown in the media.
I'm Deborah, and my background is in flamenco. And my interest, what Drew has said, is on how to present the universality of what I find flamenco to be, which is basically expressing life experiences through human emotions which are universal, and through our dance partnership, Dance Beyond Borders. My desire would be how to bring that together through our partnership, to express emotions and life experiences which may be different to other people, the life experience, but the emotion is essentially the same. So that would hopefully bring more connection, integration, and unity.
I noticed that all the choreographies seem to be gravitating around socially relevant themes, not through any direction, but obviously probably not by chance. I wanted to ask, how has this current social context of being in a pandemic, how has this affected the way that you have had to approach this project or your ways of working?
For us, it's allowed us to think differently. We've been really fortunate to receive mentorship from someone who's based in the UK, and I don't know if we would have ended up there because we wouldn't have thought of it. But so the online aspect of working has broadened our horizons and allowed us to reach out to people who we wouldn't have normally reached out to because the walls were closed. So it's lifted that kind of boundary, which was always there, but was never really there actually, because it's always possible, but it's allowed new ways of working in collaboration with people outside of Malta. So for us, that was really great.
Well, from my point of view, I think I had a lot more time to actually be exposed to many things which usually I don't have time to listen to or to read, you know, but being stuck at home for so many months without wanting, you're reading newscasts, and I try to get exposed to a lot of different views. You know, I don't like this idea that I have my point of view, so I try not to get exposed only to things which are in line with my beliefs, because the more exposed I am to the opposite side of the scenario, the more maybe I can see things which I didn't see before. And that actually got me debating within myself. You know, I ended up contradicting myself on things. I thought I had a very strong stand. You know, I thought I stood for something, and then after hearing certain people speak from the complete other end of the spectrum, it actually made me question my beliefs. And I think that's one of the main things that's getting translated through my work now. You know, this idea of maybe you should not be so ingrained in believing one side, because it's not allowing us to open up a conversation. You know, people have now become so marginalized with all we are being fed, that it's stopping us from, you know, just sitting down and, yes, even debating. Why not? You know, it might create a much larger level of understanding, which I think the world might really need at this point in time. So.
Great. I know Zoe is covering gender stereotypes in your work. What is this notion of identity or gender for you, and how are you, perhaps not as generally, how are you directly translating this concept into movement in your choreographic process?
So just to come to your question, I think I also agree with Diane, and that I also had time to kind of read and research. And something that I found really interesting with this year that's been going, it's that we've kind of been limited physically in terms of movement and where we can go and what we can do, but the social movement has been big. There's been a lot of issues that have been put forward, and I you know, had really the time to really delve and read about them and get to know more different sides of stories of different parts of society. And I guess I was gravitated to, because of my own experience as you know, being a woman in society. So I wanted to see how I could use that in the work, because that was, I tend to obsess on something and research one thing, and then I can't think like that was, if I was going to make work, it was going to be about that. And how I plan to translate that in my work, I'm still navigating that. There's a lot of information that I am trying to organize in some way. But my main, I guess, interest is to explore these stereotypes that seemingly are very normal in our language, in our society, in the way we speak, almost so normal that we tend to not realize sometimes that it's and how this affects the relationship that we have with space, or different genders have with space. Or more than that, is the expectation of the relationship that one has with space according to your gender. So I'm playing with this idea a lot when it comes to physicalizing it. Yeah.
I want to turn now just to a point which I think is quite relevant for everyone, just as you are making solos. You have obviously one one body to work with, which has a very specific movement signature. And obviously when you're creating choreography, it's not just about the movement itself, but also the body that is wearing it, and has to portray your intentions as a choreographer to the audience, which is a lot of responsibility and probably harder than having a lot of bodies in the space in some ways. So as you've just started working this week, how has working with that one specific dancer or body, how has that changed the way that you imagined the process would be, or how the movement was going to look?
So yes, of course, as Rochelle, I have my own movement signature, but I went with the mindset before starting this choreography, and it was, look, the importance is not my movement signature, it's the thematic that I want to portray. And in the room at the moment, we're working with 2 dancers, so we have the privilege to have the soloist and also an understudy. And it's a really nice learning process because I get the opportunity to give a task or an environment or a situation to 2 different bodies, 2 different genders, and they completely take it in their own individual way. So it's really a nice way to see their movement signature. And my job, my mindset at this moment is like, how can I make it stronger with their strengths? So I went in the space, and the first thing that I asked them to do was to create a little phrase only with their strengths and only with breaking off the cliches that they already know, but they do like their authentic selves. And I think this, for me at least, it helps to get the thematic even stronger and more honest. So it's not about my movement signature at this point.
Yeah, I agree with Rochelle as well. When I came in the studio already, I had at the beginning this idea of really working with the dancer. So because I am addressing the topic of the body as the central element of the creative process, I am trying to really see and listen, more than see actually, listen to what is there already, what dancer is offering, and to address also the body, not only from a physical point of view, but also take the other elements of the dancer and trying to draw them in the process. So as I was mentioning before, as a human, so drawing from the emotional body, the mental body, all these other elements. So I feel I was already kind of open to that before, and of course now it's the first week that we're working, and I am tuning in this process of listening, and then slowly I hope to take what they're offering and to challenge that, so that to go beyond perhaps.
I think this idea of collaboration that you've mentioned is obviously quite an important factor. Even though it's your work, it's going to have a significant impact. And I just wanted to address actually the variety here amongst yourselves as choreographers, the variety in performative backgrounds and skills everyone has. And I'm quite interested to see how this produces different results, different choreographic voices. I know Rochelle has training in physical theatre and clowning. I know Deborah and Julienne, you have backgrounds in flamenco and musical theatre, I think, from speaking to Andrea. And I just wondered how important is it for you to have this aspect of yourself in your work? Is it an important part of your voice, or does it help you perhaps narrate something better or enhance the meaning behind your piece?
For us, it's what's beautiful about our partnership is that we have very versatile backgrounds, so both bring in different experiences and different training, etc., into our work. And for me, how I see that transitioning into the choreographic process, to the collaboration with the two ŞfinMalta dancers, sort of like through our backgrounds, we are vehicles through which we can express what we want to bring to the table. So for example, in my case with flamenco, it's really based on that introspective journey. So it's really going within to our personal life experience, what emotions the person would have felt, and how then they can express that through movement, through facial expression, etc. So at least this week it has been a real privilege to be part of the process where from day one, the rest of the days, the dancers, we together sort of created that safe space where slowly they kept going deeper and deeper, and they were going to that vulnerable place to be able to express the really deep, which is what we envision the piece to be, because in our piece it's representing fragments of the emotional experience of a woman who has experienced forced migration and is now residing in Malta. So because of the sensitivity of the piece, it is very important that we help and enable the dancers to go through that personal process to be able to express those deep experiences.
Yeah, I think to add, for us it's a practice of developing a way to encourage them to keep diving deep, to keep going, and then it's, to be honest, letting go of my dance ahead and becoming very human and seeing how I feel when they move. So if it's this, if I don't feel moved, then we need to go deeper. Welcome to all that's. So we're actually going, because we're using a dance theatre approach to work with our dancers, which is all about storytelling, meaning, feeling, and expressing small stories with very big context.
I think it's really interesting actually that you're doing this with flamenco, because a lot of traditional dance forms are used originally to tell narratives, so it's a really nice aspect of your work that you're putting in there. Rochelle?
So speaking about the background, I guess it's more about the departure points that the choreographer would take, because of course it's natural that we take the technique or the experience that we had. And yes, I did have training in physical theater. I did not study clown. Actually, I only did like one workshop in clowning, and I feel that clowning isn't something that is studied. It's always a new experience. It's always going with an innocent kid mindset. So this could be, let's say, pushed in an environment which is always, like unpredictable, or that's how we find the. Yeah, I wouldn't say that my expertise is in clown, not at all. But at the moment, what I'm trying to push is, okay, what tools can I use that could push the dancer to go through an experience which is not about composition of movement and counts, but it's about devising of movement which is from an internal voice. So, for instance, my choreography is about to speak about how data is really the prominent money-making economy in the world. Maybe not so much people know about it. It's like a transparent stream. So I'm speaking to the dancers about this. We have a lot of dialogue going on, and it's like, how can I set the background, which is not, okay, you go from point A to B with your own movement, but what you really want to say. And sometimes we use props, sometimes we use masks, sometimes we use points of inspiration that the dancer sees, that he encounters in his daily life, like, for example, his own phone, his own apps, and the way that he makes certain choices to limit, let's say, his time on the phone. or her time on the phone. So it's more what tool do you bring forward from the background of my physical theater?
Yeah, if I can, it's actually really interesting to see everyone's point of view. I come from a performance background that's quite ingrained in technique and aesthetic. So obviously I have, you know, to me the aesthetic is always going to be present in the work, you know. So even though I'm drawing on their bodies through, you know, guided tasks and improvisation, but at the end of the day, I really feel as a choreographer, I need to mold and refine everything they bring to the table to create, obviously, a certain, you know, if it's a line, to me, it's always going to be a line. And, you know, I would want a line to look in a certain way. And I quite have the philosophy that if an audience has context, and then I don't need to compromise with the movement vocabulary, you know, because the audience can interpret what I want to say, even if they're seeing, you know, one aesthetic or another. So it's really interesting to see the different approaches everyone is taking, and I think our personal backgrounds obviously affect us also as creators at the end of the day. So I'm also very lucky that, you know, ÄžfinMalta are quite classically trained bodies, and we have the ability to and then use that and deconstruct that basic background they have, you know, and use it to, in my case, I feel, to my advantage. So yeah, it's really great seeing the different perspectives from that point of view.
Just because Diane was speaking about lines and form, I wanted to ask Concetta, because you studied architecture, which is amazing, but can you tell us how you transitioned between this and contemporary choreography, and perhaps what are the overlaps there that interest you, and does this affect the way that you see lines and form and structure in bodies in space or in choreography?
Yes, I've studied building engineering architecture, and then I transitioned and I studied dance. That's the reason why I came to Malta 5 years ago. I think there are a lot of overlaps between architecture and dance and choreography. They both have the two elements of aesthetics on one hand, which is always present, and on the other hand, they are really detailed oriented. So in order to support that aesthetic, there is a whole work underneath, which is really detailed and engineered. No, so it's like the crafting of the end result, and I find this. Fascinating. It's like the two different energies, but they are both then bringing the final result. And I would say that I think it definitely affects the way I think and the way I work. It is about, it's true that architecture is about shapes and forms and structures, but it's not only about that. It's also a lot about concept, and it's a lot about the energy and the atmosphere that the space and the geometry of the space and the proportions is bringing then to the human experience. When I stand in a circular space or when I stand in a square, it's very different. Feeling and atmosphere that brings. So I'm really fascinated by that, by how, let's say, I can create that experience. So I like to approach the space and, let's say, from the point of view of the architecture, seeing the person that is going to experience that space. So starting from there, what is the experience that I want that person to have of that space, or what is the atmosphere that I want to build, and then I can translate it into, okay, what I do with it. And I feel in that sense it affects also the way I work with dance. However, I think it's also an unconscious, influence for sure. As everything we do in life, it's always there in the background, and the way the brain works, it's adjusting. Yeah.
I think that's an amazing perspective, to be honest. I come from more of a just dance background, so it's amazing to see how you can incorporate this in your work consciously or unconsciously. Wow. Gaby, I wanted to ask you, because you've done a lot of movement research recently in order to expand your physical practices. And I just wondered, what did you learn that you want to bring into this specific process? Was it an ideology or a method of structuring or a particular movement quality? What did you want to bring here to put into this work of yours now?
Well, first I began researching my own movement for more my normal way of moving, which was more within the fluid aspect, within the more, same as I was saying before, in the grounded aspect. But then I was working with a choreographer, completely different, but he worked a lot on improvisation and composition. And we always used to go into the space, and somehow each time we entered that space, we had to create, he used to give us a score, but we had to create something new each time. And each time you can't go in and just do something that you always do, otherwise it's not going to be interesting. So my main research began from there. And then from there I began seeing like how I was improvising, and the different personalities that I was portraying in a way. Like maybe at the moments I was being more animalistic, at moments I was being more neutral. And these are what I want to challenge maybe Tara into doing. So yeah, I can see, so she's portraying more of a creature, which is representing, in my head, the mind and our brain when we're feeling vulnerable. So the constant, different thoughts that we're having, and so there's going to be this creature is going to just portray different, different parts of what we're thinking when we're feeling vulnerable, and those moments that we're feeling vulnerable. So really and truly, I would say more movement quality, but within different intentions in a way. So.
Thank you. While we're speaking about methods as well, Diane, I know that you mentioned using autobiographical reasoning in your process. Could you expand for us a tiny bit on what that means for you and how you're using that as a starting point really to create movement from that?
Yes, it was actually very interesting to me. It's almost like taking a snapshot of your thoughts at a point where you don't even know you're thinking them, so to speak. And it records and it documents things which you think but you don't usually say. Very often something triggers you to start an internal debate, which and then sometimes becomes a dialogue, sometimes becomes an argument in your own head. And obviously this happened a lot to me during lockdown when I was, getting exposed to so many different points of view. I actually started debating things with myself, and sometimes it became quite, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but quite heated in my own head. And I started thinking things which I know I would probably not say in public. And I actually found that really interesting, and that's where I started researching this method. And there are scientists who actually used this method to get into people's psyches. So I actually asked the performers to, document particular moments in their days, just random thoughts they had. And then I worked with a writer, with Erica, who kind of created her own narrative and mapped out all these random thoughts, and then this narrative is obviously going to be translated into movement. So that's kind of the process.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think the company is providing dramaturgical support. Have any of you started, apart from Diane, obviously, on this collaboration? And if so, how has it helped to enhance your decision-making process? Obviously, you've only just started this week, but how has it maybe changed your thoughts about your own decision-making process?
I started really briefly. The original idea was that I'm working with Thomas Schaupp, and he was meant to be coming here just 2 weeks before the premiere date, but with the pandemic this is not possible. So I just gave him a little overview of the plot that I imagine, and we spoke briefly yesterday, I think it was. And for me, it helped now in terms of support or confidence, because I was like asking him, okay, I have this idea of a blackout, but I don't know if it should be something which is prolonged, something which is short, and then he's asking me, okay, what is your intention? So my intention means that it's going to be a shock, it's going to be something that separates the technology from the human. And he was quite supportive. Okay, I see where your reasoning comes from, and then there was also this dilemma, you know, from my side. But we are dancers, we are meant to be visible, we are meant to be really seen all the time. It's our forte, let's say. I don't really know how I could tackle this with the dancer and the audience, but I want the effect, I want the shock. And he was quite supportive, and then he explained to me, yeah, it's also not meant to be visible as a product, but also a sensorial experience. So there's a lot that you go into. So yes, dramaturgy is not, okay, sometimes it helps to understand what is the beginning, what is the middle, behind the middle, or the end of a piece, but also about the effect that you want to produce. And I have to say that even in this little brief time, yeah, it gave me much more confidence to go on forward.
For me, I only had one meeting with Rodia, and it was before I started the process, which was about 2 weeks ago. And after the meeting, I realized that since the solo was I initially began the research on myself, I realized that after the meeting, I was still focusing on what my own body, what my own physicality was researching. And after that meeting, I realized, okay, the way she was questioning stuff, she made me think that I'm still thinking that way, you know? So I realized I had to take a big step back and think, like, what can Tara portray within vulnerability, you know? And yeah, so then she also helped me conceptually to ground it, because vulnerability is such a vast concept, no? So she really made, we played a task where we constantly asked each other questions. And what was interesting is that I always fell onto the same question in completely different words. So she made me, and I didn't even realize I was doing that. At the end, when we finished the whole task, she's like, did you realize you were doing that? I'm like, no. So clearly, then from there, I'm like, okay, so I clearly have to focus on this, on the idea of being fear, on the idea of what's holding you back, you know, on the mental thoughts within your own self, you know, rather than what's happening around you in the space. So
I had a similar experience to Gaby with Rodia. I only had one session till now. I have one tomorrow, but that's what I found interesting, is that I had a lot of questions, and she helped me narrow down and ask more appropriate questions, in a sense, a kind of, yeah, more focused way of organizing my thoughts a bit better. So I think that also gives me the confidence a bit that I know that someone is there when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and you know, there's someone who can guide me by asking questions, or make me, you know, better navigate through things, through my brain.
But I guess because we're two people working, we're very clear in I guess we bounce off each other a lot. And so I'm very curious, we have Thomas is there to help him guide us to keep going into that deep space. Tools that he can suggest for us to use. And I guess for me also how we can bring in other elements like lighting to really support telling that story. So I guess in terms of technical advice is where we are quite interested, along with, of course, being an outside eye and giving us feedback as a viewer.
I think that's definitely an advantage of there being two of you as well, that you know, can have this role for each other almost as the process goes along. Just to finish up, I was wondering if you have any more preconceived notions that you had before this week, which this week has now changed. maybe you've had to adapt something or...
Yeah, yesterday was a little bit of a challenge for me actually because I had some preconceived notions, and I realized that I have to plot them better because it's so far at a point where, okay, the exercise is being executed by the dancers. We get what we want to say, but the audience will not understand. So it's like, okay, I have to make it even more clear. And I have to say, I thought it would be easier to work within these epidemic conditions. I'm realizing there's a certain etiquette that I have to maybe like learn from the new. I have to always be wearing the barricaded mask, and maybe the work is even more depending on the verbal aspect from my side. So how do I adapt to that? And like the entry point is a little bit more of a breakdown, I have to say. It's interesting because it limits me, and with this limit I understand more what the process entails. I think I'm speaking a little bit like airy-fairy as a conditioned way of working, but maybe you all know what I'm feeling at this moment as a creator, you know?
For me, it has been really beautiful to be able to work with two people like Andrea and Amber are very different people, right? And it's because our focus is on that introspective journey and that really deep personal expression. It has been really nice to see two people do that in their own way. And then also to help each other do that as well. So we, from the first day we were with them this week to the last day we were with them, it was really fascinating to see the progression in that. Especially on the last day where we ended our time together, where they did an improvised task facing each other, and in one space they couldn't move their legs, it was just using the upper body. And where they took that emotion was really special. So in a way, it's as challenging as these times are. At least for me, it has been a process on trying to understand. Okay, I have to surrender to this because this is how it is. I need to accept how this is, and what action can I take to find new possibilities of doing this. And I think that has transcended, for example, in working with two dancers and not one. For example, in my case with the flamenco background, it's a completely different background to the contemporary sphere. But what has been really amazing, and thank you ŞfinMalta for such an amazing opportunity, was to bring in that element into that space, and that it's really about the humanness, like who are we as humans, and what can we express and what can we connect with. So yeah, I think it has been finding new ways of being and doing and living somehow.
I guess it's also not underestimating, I guess, the fact that the two dancers can be in close proximity to each other, can touch each other, can feed off that energy that exists, you know. So I guess that's one thing we've learned. At least there isn't touch that's available, but there is a shared space that can enhance certain transmission towards inspiring each other to move in borrowed ways, I guess.
I want to ask one probably quite large question, but perhaps briefly, if you can. What do you think the role of art or performance is today, right here, now? So what do you want to give to the audience, or what do you think they need to or want to see?
For me, the pandemic was the urge to go with the voice for this choreography. I was quarantined for a month and a half. I've never been behind four walls for such a long time. And I started to understand how, one, my body is changing, my geographical landscape is changing, and also how my social interactions are changing. And I said, I really want to speak about these social interactions because it's not like 10 years ago. everything is a lot of information, a lot of artificiality in the people around me and who I know or who I do not know enough. So I feel that the audience needs something which is zoomed down to one little focus and maybe a little bit slow tempoed, because every time we see something and we zap through. So I would like to propose something which is of opposition to that, and hope. I think an audience needs hope, especially in these times where we don't know where it's going, we don't know how long it's going to take. So, yeah, the only way to survive in my case is hope.
Yeah, I feel that, of course, the pandemic is affecting the very elements of how we live. So, how we breathe, how we can speak through the mask or through this visor. Is changing the way we move in public spaces, the way we take distance from others. So it is really changing all these basic elements of life, which are, in my case, like part of the 5 tools that I'm using for the piece. But in general, I think that because of these changes, which are, I think, every one of us are living, so the audience can really relate with that. And I think that the role of art now is actually more than ever to connect. So through what we are seeing or through what we are experiencing, and I think that audience, maybe rather than what audience want to see, maybe it's more the feeling. So it's not the audience want to see something, but wants to feel. This is what I feel. Yeah, to go to the space and feel something, to feel this connection, to bring us together as audience and as artists, and to feel alive.
For me, I would feel that the audience probably needs a sense of escapism from what's actually happening outside, from the pandemic. So for me, if I want to go and watch a theater, a performance, something that you wouldn't have done for many months now, I think you want something a bit light, a little bit relatable in a way, but not necessarily relatable to the pandemic itself. I think that can stay outside, because otherwise you leave heavier than when you entered. For me, something fun, something light, something relatable. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know what people want to see. But what I think is interesting or really beautiful is that in this time that, you know, you have a lot of kind of destruction of what we are used to, and the fact that you have artists who are creating, the act of creation is I think is such a hopeful thing. And when people can find something to relate to through the creation of dance, of music, of anything, even though there are barriers still, where a lot of it is through a screen or you know, a very limited audience space. But yeah, I think the fact that we are going against this this breaking down of what we know and still creating experiences out of that is quite a hopeful, beautiful thing.
It's interesting because we're 7, let's call it, contemporary artists, and usually as contemporary creators we tend to question a lot, we tend to analyze a lot, and it sometimes becomes a very heavy process. But I think we can't underestimate the importance of actually entertaining our audience. Now, that is not to say that our thematics need to be shallow or superficial, but ultimately, you know, I mean, I really believe that if there's anything we need to do in these days is actually entertain the people who are coming. You know, now, it can be entertaining by something light, and something, you know, and something deep can also be just as entertaining. And I think if I learned anything in these 6 months is that the value that the arts has brought to many of our, you know, our mental well-being. I really think it helped a lot of people stay afloat, so to speak. So I really hope that between us we are going to continue contributing to that positive mental well-being of all the people who come and are exposed to our work, basically.
So thank you guys for this discussion and for sharing some of your process ideas and your methods with us. And we really look forward to seeing the performances, which will be at Spazju Kreattiv, the 26th or 29th of November. Audiences can buy tickets online to stream, or also to come physically to the theatre. And you can buy tickets at www.creativita.org. And for more information about the projects or our work, you can visit ŞfinMalta.org or any of our social media sites. Thank you very much.